Welcome back. In today's video, I'm just going to get right into it. Before I do, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. It takes little of your time and it helps out a lot. This story is an important one, so please don't forget to share as well. Please watch the full video. Although the story may seem unusual, it's a factual account that sheds light on covert activities happening today. During the time of this story, I discovered what a mysterious group refers to as the Visualyzer. It's a phenomenon that I, along with many others, experience as visual snow. A capability that allows people to essentially have a VR-like experience, directly transmitted and viewed through their own eyes. The night before the experience I'm about to share, I witnessed something strange. A stationary fireball in the sky that remained visible for over 20 minutes. Similar to the sightings reported near Area 51. The following morning, I decided to test accessing the VR-like environment the Visualyzer had shown me before. In my home, standing in my living room with my eyes closed, I entered the Visualyzer again. However, this time the experience felt different. The scene began with a cinematic sequence, as it usually did, but this time something was different. The visual snow cleared, and I found myself in the familiar video game-like environment. In front of me was a strange contraption, a stand holding a scroll. As the scene began, the scroll unraveled, revealing a set of Viking runes. As it continued to unroll, the cinematic panned forward, moving past the scroll and into a narrow corridor framed by 4 pillars, one above, 2 on the sides, and 1 below, against a completely black background. At the end of the corridor, I looked down and saw an unusual stone symbol resembling an eye within an eye. As I moved through the symbol, something strange happened. A new screen suddenly dropped down, bouncing as it filled my entire view. Something completely different from my previous experiences. I found myself in a room resembling a laboratory or workshop, still rendered in a game-like style. The room had a stone-textured appearance, with strange terminals scattered around. At the center stood a round pedestal, connected to a pylon-like structure on its left side. A small, floating, rotating object hovered above the pedestal. I had a notion that I should try to gesture a scan above the object. I physically moved my right hand up and down throughout the area where the object would be relative to my position. As I did so, I heard a scanning sound and seen a light passing through the object. I again felt like I should try to experiment and grab the object. So, I moved my arms again in a gesture like I was holding the object in between my hands, and to my surprise, the object moved with my hands as it stayed in place between my hands. I decided to open my eyes to see what would happen. To my surprise, the visual of the object remained in place between my hands, keeping the same scale and position, but now existing within my physical environment. As I moved around the room, the object stayed with me, still hovering between my hands. Curious, I decided to try something different and set it down on the floor. Amazingly, it stayed exactly where I placed it. I wondered if the room I had previously visited would still be accessible if I closed my eyes. As I did, the room reappeared, but this time with a new item on the pedestal, a small terminal-like device. I repeated the same steps and the same results occurred. This time, however, I noticed that the previous object I had set down was still there. I placed the terminal next to a wall, and I could physically walk around it and examine its structure. Each object had a wireframe outline that emitted a white glow. The terminal was about 1 foot wide and 1.5 feet tall. It featured a unique spectrum on its front, shifting from blue on the left to white in the middle and red on the right. It hovered in the air as though it were an unfinished wireframe object with no solid texture. I decided to close my eyes again to see if I could revisit the room. And it worked. This time a new object appeared that looked like an antenna. I followed the same steps. Once again, the results were the same. The objects I had previously placed in the room were still there. I set the antenna-like object, which stood about 2 to 3 feet tall, next to the terminal. I stood there for a moment, examining the object carefully, till I finally decided to leave my home. This moment was exactly what I described in the previous video. on closed-eye visualization. In levels 3 to 4, there's a shift where the visuals transition from being visible only with the closed eyes to appearing in open-eyed experiences, with elements and assets merging into the real environment. However, this time, there was a clear structure and control over what I was seeing. It wasn't just a random hallucination. It felt like an augmented reality experience, but without the need for a headset. Interestingly, this controlled transition happened more than once. The next experience involved aliens. In a previous video, I showcased the game-like artistic environments I often encountered. These were immersive spaces where I could freely explore, moving from one area to another. Certain areas were accessible only by passing through doors, adding a layer of discovery to the experience. At one point, I entered a room and was presented with a unique cinematic experience. Similar to those where I could see the VR assets with my eyes open, like an augmented reality. This time, the scene revealed a room with 6 metal pods lying on their sides, at a slightly upward angle. As the pods opened, they revealed blue-gray aliens, resembling the classic gray aliens often described in various accounts. I found that moment intriguing, especially when the same assets reappeared later. I refer to what I saw in the VR environment as assets because, in creating a visual representation of my story, I had to learn VFX work, where these objects are commonly called assets. Since elements of the visualizer align with this terminology, that's why I use it here. Standing there at home in my office one evening, I got a weird feeling. A notion, yet again. These notions tend to accompany these moments. An almost subliminal context, presenting itself that something is about to occur. This is something I found to be a common trend for people who experience anything related to UAPs. I have theories on this I'll present at a later date, as the group has taught me a lot, including what such notions may stem from. I had a TV in my office, and I suddenly felt compelled to stand on the opposite side of the room to look at my reflection in the screen. As I did, I noticed something strange. In the reflection, I saw myself standing there, but beside me on my right side was something else, a blue-gray alien. The same type I'd seen before in the Visualyzer. However, this time, he appeared with a realistic quality, upscaled. Not the game-like style I'd seen before. I glanced over to my right to see if he was actually standing there, but nothing. Yet, when I looked back at the reflection, there he was, standing beside me, looking down. I decided to see what he was looking at in the reflection. That's when I saw it. A childlike blue-gray alien, as realistically detailed as the adult. The child stood there, gazing up at me. They looked so real. But, remembering my past experiences, I decided to test it. I reached out to touch the child's head. As my head got close, the child recoiled, and for a moment, I saw something odd. A glitch. The top of its head seemed to clip and disappear, leaving only a blue outline with a white interior. This wasn't the first time I'd encountered this type of software error in the group's displays, but that's a story for another time. It was clearly a flaw in the system I was interacting with. The next event occurred on 4 separate occasions, each displaying the same visuals. These moments made it clear that the group could influence my perception in impressive ways, and they even communicated directly with me to emphasize that they were responsible for these effects. Often I would see unusual objects floating around in the VR scenes, like smash balls or spheres marked with the Star of David. In a previous video, I mentioned encountering a tomb labeled Tomb of the All-Seeing Eye. After that, I started noticing pyramids with an all-seeing eye at the top, drifting around the Visualyzer environments. One day, I heard a voice say,
"What am I going to do with all these pyramids?"
I didn't think much of it until I stepped outside and saw an amazing sight. The group had added a stunning augmented reality effect to my perception. Pyramids stretched across the horizon, side by side, as if far off in the distance, complete with depth and a haze to create a realistic look. This display appeared 4 different times, demonstrating the incredible potential of perception-altering technology. A next-level AR experience without any VR headset. If you followed this far, I I want to emphasize that this is a factual account. These moments are just a glimpse of how the group has openly demonstrated that their technology can create VR and AR experiences that blend seamlessly with an individual's perception. There's much more to share, as the group went on to reveal their capability to project holograms, engineer dreams, and connect with others across society, including entities like the CIA, and even produce UAPs. Anyhow, I'll pick up the story on the next video. Remember to like and subscribe, and share as well. And keep dreaming.